Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast where I bring you the best and the brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity to drive your career forward. My guest today is Sean Harper, the CEO and co-founder of Kin Insurance. Sean is a serial entrepreneur who has been able to execute on multiple businesses in multiple different industries, and he taught himself how to code as a kid and eventually hustled into the University of Chicago, not too shabby, where he studied economics and fell in love with business. Can't wait to dig into that story. And after graduation, Sean worked at BCG, that's Boston Consulting Group for all you noobs out there, and Longworth Venture Partners, where he got to witness business development and niche finding firsthand. And he has launched e-commerce company TSS Radio, which, crazy enough, I worked with them during my time at Sirius, and payment processor Foo Fighters, no, just kidding, Fee Fighters. I'm sure you guys did that a bunch of times, and has exited multiple businesses. So we're going to dig. We're going to talk about his journey, his entrepreneurial journey. We're going to talk about Kin, direct-to-consumer marketing, and a whole lot more. I'm excited to do this. Sean Harper, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. And I really appreciate this nature setting because I hear that these microphones, I can hear the birds in the background, and it's just it's a nice escape. I think I should have done more outdoor shows over the summer.
Yeah, it's nice. I sit out here all day. It's great. It's nice.
So let's jump in here, man. And as I spoke about earlier, I love to talk about the early career. And I don't think that's spoken about enough on these podcasts, especially when I'm talking to successful entrepreneurs like yourself, those real deep lessons learned. And I want to talk first about, the programming background. Where did you get that itch? Where was the first itch that you had, to be, hands-on, in the computers?
When I was little, I liked playing computer games. My dad was a nerd, and so we always had computers. I mean, he didn't work in programming. He was a police officer, but he just was into technology, and we had gear around the house. So I just started playing with it. The first computer program I wrote was to keep track of my baseball cards. I was super into baseball cards, and I was just like, there's no good program to track my baseball cards. I'm going to make one. I never finished that. It didn't work, but it got me started on it. And I just like making stuff, and this is my creative outlet, I guess. And, as a kid, it was fun. Computers were so janky back then, It's like it's just what they weren't like it. They are now.
Oh, no way. I remember, I don't want to date you or myself, but I remember learning in elementary school, like DOS prompts to make the rocket ship go up, and then we'd print them out and everything. And that's kind of like the basic and logo and all that kind of stuff. But what did programming kind of teach you about business? Were there any similarities there?
A little bit. They're both about making stuff. And, business is like, I love to see an opportunity and just make something new. And that same deal with programming, right? There's no program for this, I should make one. And it really got me into it because I was starting to make these computer programs when I was, in high school or middle school. And then you're like, well, I'd really like it if other people used it. So I got to figure out how to, market it, how to collect payment for it, et cetera, et cetera. And so I really just started, into business because I wanted people to use my stuff.
Yeah.
I also I just wanted to make money, to be honest. Like when I was young, maybe my parents didn't give me a big enough allowance or whatever, but I was always just hustling. Like I wanted more money.
Stand, mail route.
Yeah, it was stuff like that. Like because I wanted to buy more computer gear. So maybe
so
it's
that
like
was a drive. Yeah, it was a feed. Yeah. It was a fuel. We were talking about Gary before, Gary Vaynerchuk, and for him, it's that concept of money as a fuel to keep things moving forward. So jumping in. Chicago guy, you stayed in town there. Was the focus always like, listen, I'm going to get into this university and I'm going to study business? Was that like the target? Was that the end game there?
Not really. I was really like a computer guy all through high school. I was a nerd and I wasn't very popular. And I spent a lot of time playing Warcraft and like programming and stuff. And in my senior year of high school, I took an AP economics class and just got super into economics. And I was reading. I was a huge nerd, so I was reading all these like old economics books like Hayek and Friedman and stuff you probably shouldn't be reading when you're a senior in high school. You should be doing something more fun. And I also started dating a girl who I was really into, and she ended up going to college at Northwestern. And I was like, well, shit, I kind of want to keep dating her.
So that's the
and
reason.
I'm really into economics, and now I'm obsessed with Milton Friedman, of all things. University of Chicago is where I should go, but I had terrible grades. So I had to figure out a way to get into college, even though I didn't have good grades.
How'd you do that, man?
Well, at the time...
Did you break into the computer system? Did you change your grades? I mean, it's long past now. I don't think anybody's going to...
Don't tell anyone. No, I didn't do anything like that. But, at the time, and I think this is still true, the University of Chicago was really into just getting weird kids. And I had pretty good...
Weirdness quotient?
Huh? Yeah, I had pretty good weirdness quotient. They had this thing called the uncommon application. All the schools have the common application. Right. Theirs is like the opposite. It's the uncommon. You can't do the common application with them because they're weird and they want weird people. And so I apparently had a sufficiently weird application to get onto the wait list. And then I was like, wow, this is good. I didn't expect to make it this far. And so I just started.
What made it weird, Sean? What made it like? Do you remember the application? I'm super curious now. Like, what was it? Was it like an essay format? Like, how did they go about assessing your weirdness quotient?
I wrote a computer program, and I wrote. I compiled it, and it basically was like a computer program that told everybody all about me, and had some like embedded like games and stuff like that. And I burned it to a CD. And I sent them. I got the little CD kit so I could put a cool label on the CD and everything, and that's what I sent them along with all the source code that went into the computer program. And so I think I was probably the only person that submitted a computer program for my application. And apparently, yeah.
Could we pause for a moment and just go back to a little bit retro and how old we feel now? I remember burning CDs. I was big into music. Still am into music, but I would rip stuff off of Napster. I shouldn't be saying this now, right? And I would burn like mixed CDs for it. And I had the CD burner. I had a couple of them, and it was just fun. And then the worst part was you would get so far down the line, and then there would be like a critical fail, like an error fail, and you would just curse your head off because some of them took longer than others. Or I remember I did a lot of like data backup on them. I would back up all my school files. Those are the good old days, and now we have things on the edge of our fingers, right?
I know it's too easy now. I had this crazy. I worked at a computer store for a while, so I would always get like the hard drives that were like no one wanted anymore, and I had this like PC basically. I built it into my music server. It had like 10 hard drives in it. They were all like small hard drives I got for free. And I would just rip all the CDs onto this music server, basically. And so I had my own little like version of Spotify, I guess.
That's awesome.
But it was a lot of work, of course. And then I don't know what I did with it. I probably just threw it away at some point.
So fast forward, you come out of school and you land at Boston Consulting Group. I mean, was that a culture shock to you? Let's talk about it culturally first before we get into what you learned. Like, was it a smooth landing, a smooth transition for you to go into this? I mean, listen, for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, we're talking, this is major leagues here in a consulting perspective. There's process, there's, it's a whole thing over there. Talk to us a little bit about that experience in your life, because I think it's important, and for me, I think the hardest transition, and I see it in a lot of, because I'm in the recruitment business now, is that life transition between college, university, and into the corporate world, especially a BCG type place.
Yeah, I was pretty ready for the corporate aspect of it because I did a lot of internships in school. Like I did an internship at Goldman. I did an internship at Credit Suisse. I did an internship at a hedge fund. So I was always just like, hustling. And so by the time I got out of college, I was used to business communication and all of that. But the one thing that was really surprising to me was how little attention to like the details and content people had within these big companies. Because at these consulting companies,
What do you mean?
you're sort of dropped into these companies, and the companies have big problems, and you're supposed to like figure out what it is and put it in a presentation and help them solve the problem. And the thing I realized pretty quickly was like a lot, especially at the higher levels at these businesses, they often don't really know how the business works.
They don't know how the sausage is made.
They have no idea. And so it was frustrating at first, because I'm like, why are you asking us this question? What the hell do I know about this? I'm 23. And then you realize the answer to all of these is like, you just go find the guy in the basement who knows the answer.
but is that the secret, like, of what learning? And like, is it the, like, if you're automatically a naturally inquisitive person, but you don't have the experience of being like, inquisitive in the workplace, I mean, just trying to figure shit out, right? Like, figure it out, find the answer, find out who knows it.
And don't be afraid to not know, right? Because I think you see a lot of these companies, people would just sort of pretend they knew what was going on. And at the end of the day, no one knew what was going on. Like, you got to be able to say, no, I don't know how this works. Tell me how it works. I'm going to go find the guy who can tell me how it works. I want to know, and I want to know the details of it. And it's kind of fun. It's like a little detective story.
And I'm jumping way ahead, and we're gonna double back here. But when you're interviewing folks that came to work for you, how important is that natural inquisitivity, the problem solving? I mean, is that like the core thing that you're looking for in a new employee?
Yeah, so our two cultural values at Kin are, one, we run through walls, and that's just like your determination, your grit, your
tenacity,
detail, your tenacity, all that stuff, because it's hard what we're doing. So that's a really big part of it. And then the other part is like, you have to be chill. That's our second core value. You have to be able to do all that. You have to be tenacious and brutal and like stick to the facts and everything like that. But you also got to be nice to people when you're doing it.
Yeah, that's your help.
That goes without saying. And then the other thing that's really important to us again is, I want to make sure that whoever is closest to the data is making the decision. Because I just don't want to fall into that trap I saw at these big companies where people would be like, oh, let me go ask my boss. It's like, your boss doesn't know the answer to the question. You know the answer.
He's not in the trenches. You know the answer. You just want that's some kind of validation. So from BCG, we go to setting up shop at TSS Radio, which, correct me if I'm wrong, becomes a top Inc. 500 fastest growing business. What was that experience like, and that key golden nugget that you take away from your experience building TSS that you apply daily? There's a lot. So we call that a 3-parter in this line of work.
That was really fun. So I had this friend who I grown up with, and he was the most entrepreneurial guy I knew. He was like, from the early age, he would like be selling candles door to door, and like he had a magic show. He charged
candles.
money for candles because he was like making candles in his garage. Like, why are you making candles? It's like, I could sell
better than making meth in the garage, right? Probably less profitable though, but more legal.
I assume so. Probably less dangerous too.
Yeah, you don't want to blow up your parents' garage.
And he was just like, hey, I'm going to start this business. And it was a stupid idea that was sort of tangentially related to what TSS Radio eventually became. And I was like, yeah, man, like I'll do that with you. You're amazing. Like, you're so entrepreneurial. I can't help but support you. And so we just sort of started at a very basic level, like trying to sell stuff online that was related to satellite radio. And it was such a janky, low rent operation at first, right? Like we had physical inventory, and we like stored it in Taylor's apartment. And then when we ran out of room in his apartment, we stored it like on the lawn. Like, he lived in a coach house, so we were storing it in like the backyard of his landlord. And it was just like, I hope it doesn't rain. And we were just doing everything in the most scrappy way possible because we didn't know anything. We had never started a business before. We were just sort of figuring it out as we went. And it was a lot of fun. We made a lot of mistakes, but I think I still do this. Like, if there's somebody in my life who has a passion for something, an idea, and wants to do something with it, you have to support these guys in however way you can, because it's important for them. And also, it was a great outcome for me. I got involved in this business that actually
You can't fake passion, right? And when someone has it in something, you got to support them as best as possible. And, even if it's a crazy idea and there's some nugget of feasibility there, You have to at least see it through. It's crazy. And for those of you that don't know, it's funny. TSS Radio was selling aftermarket and other satellite radio products, and I worked closely with them during my time working at SiriusXM. So it was real funny when I was doing my research, and I'm like, holy shit, where did I know TSS Radio from? It's just funny how small that the world is. So, from there, I read that the company you sold to Groupon was similar to Stripe. How was it similar, and why do you think they, bought it instead of going to Stripe and trying to integrate Stripe into it? What was?
Yeah, so at TSS Radio, I got really frustrated by our payment provider, and we were processing all these credit card transactions online. It just didn't work the way I expected it to.
You thought just go right into the account, nice and easy. Someone pays something, it goes right in. It's in the account. We can take the money out. We make money. No,
the APIs were crappy. The pricing was complicated and unfair. It was just really frustrating. I was like, let's do, I can do this better. So we started building this payment processor, and actually it started out not as a payment processor. It started out as a website where you could go to choose the best payment processor.
Like a middleman.
Yeah, exactly. We're like a kayak for credit card processing. And that worked okay. People liked the idea of it, but we realized about 2 years into that, maybe a year and a little bit more than a year into it, that all the options we were comparing weren't that good. And so
what we're showing people is not good. Like, we're showing you options, but none of them are actually good. Isn't it crazy how the opportunity comes from something?
Absolutely. And so we just started, we're like, okay, we can make a payment processor. And so we just sort of stopped that business, and we started writing a next generation payment processor that had really fast underwriting, that had a really good API. And that's what we built for a while, and we launched it, and we were trying to raise money for it. We'd raised like $1.5 million of VC money. So we were going out to raise another round. It was right around the same time Stripe was raising their first round. It was like a $20 million round. So we were terrified by that. We were like, oh, they've raised $20 million. Like, how are we going to keep up with these guys? And Groupon at the time really wanted to have a competitor to Square, the point of sale payments business. And their thesis was, well, we're delivering this one thing to these local merchants that they really need, which is customers. What else can we give them? How can we get deeper into their business and become the merchant operating system?
Sticky icky, as we call it, right?
Exactly. And so they really wanted to own, a point of sale business and a payments business. So they bought us, and then we bought a couple of other related businesses, and we sort of turned it into this little Square competitor within Groupon, which was an adventure.
It was an adventure. And how'd you exit out of that?
I was really excited about it for like the first year, and I had a 3-year earn out basically after they bought us. And I was really excited about it after the first year. I'd never worked at a big tech company before. That was exciting. It was an idea that I was very passionate about, and I really bought into it. And then, about a year in, you realize like, this is a big company. The core business isn't doing that well. There's a lot of drama associated with having a stock that goes from 20 to 2, back up to 10, down to 6. And, we just sort of got sick of it. And by the time the earnout was done, which was 3 years, we were ready to go do something else. And, that was nice. It was a great experience, though, to, start a business and sell it and work at the acquirer for a while. I learned a ton. It was great.
But what do you think you would do differently looking back?
I would not have sold Fee Fighters. That space got so hot, and we were
Payment
right.
Tech, yep.
Payment tech got so hot, and even like the third, fourth players are now even still, raising huge rounds, going public, and we should have stuck with it. We were just scared.
I mean, if you're kind of Monday morning quarterbacking a little bit, the pandemic, forcing everybody online with every single thing certainly, added to that too. So let's talk about this. So people always ask me, like, when you're interviewing entrepreneurs, please tell us the story. Was it over a beer? Was it over a number of conversations? Where did the seed for Kin really start to germinate, and where was it planted?
So this one, actually similar to my first business, was started when I met my co-founder. And so I kicked out of my aeronautic Groupon. I was doing some like consulting gigs, basically just to just for something to do while I was incubating and trying to figure out what business I wanted to start next. Because at that point I was super hooked on starting businesses. Like, this is what I do now. I know I can do better next time. And I ran into Lucas, my co-founder, And we hit it off right away, and we're like, we should start something together.
Right.
And so for the next year, basically, we just really put our heads down and tried to figure out what business to start. Now we had some side gigs on the side and other stuff to do. And that gave us a chance to work together and really study the market. So it was totally different than my other two businesses. The first one, the product was sort of set by Taylor, who's passionate about it. And we pivoted into something else and it turned out well. The second business, I was passionate about it because I'd seen the problem firsthand, and we pivoted into something else.
Right.
The third one, we were like kind of being management consulty about it. We're like, let's study the whole market.
Where's the white space? Where is it ripe for disruption?
Where's the opportunity, and how does that map to our skill sets, and where could we really do something that's impactful? And that's what we were thinking about. So it took us a year, but we found this business, and it's a huge business opportunity, and it's something that's really important.
So why insurance? And specifically, we're talking about homeowners insurance.
Yeah. So
for everyone out there who doesn't know what Kin is.
Kin does homeowners insurance. We do it direct to consumer, which is unusual because most homeowners are sold through these middlemen. That was similar to fee fighters because we were cutting out the middlemen. It is really high tech. So a lot of the manual stuff that legacy insurance companies do manually, we're able to automate and do over your phone. And we also we do homeowners insurance in the most dangerous parts of the country. And so about half of this is a $110 billion market. About half of it is places where I live, like Illinois, where the weather is pretty stable. It might be cold, but it's pretty stable. We don't get hurricanes or anything like that. And about half is in places where the weather is a lot more volatile.
High risk.
Like California, Texas, Florida, Carolina.
Floods, fires, tornadoes, all those natural disasters seem to be happening a lot more these days.
They are happening a lot more, and it's really hard for the insurance industry to respond to it because these are old companies, right? And they've been doing things the same way for a long time. They have a hard time responding to change. Meanwhile, the world has changed a lot. The customer preferences have changed. You don't want to talk to that guy in the strip mall anymore. You want to do it on your phone. Technology has changed. A lot of these companies are they computerized. It was one of the first industries to computerize, so we should give them props for that. A lot of the times, they're running on the same computers that they've been running on for 40 years.
Legacy, really defining legacy platforms there, man.
It's the very definition of legacy. Yeah. And then, of course, the weather is changing, and it's becoming more and more volatile, and that's happening everywhere. And so we need to figure out how to profitably do insurance and provide insurance to people who live in places, where the weather's more volatile, because you can't live. You actually can't get a mortgage or buy a home if you don't have insurance. So
correct. For anyone that doesn't know that, you cannot get a mortgage, or you could lose your mortgage if you don't have insurance. I mean, 2 years ago, I let my homeowners accidentally lapse by like a day, and it was a nightmare.
It's a whole thing. Absolutely.
It was a whole thing. I almost lost my home. I almost lost everything. It was really scary, actually, that how one misstep on a payment, because a credit card bounce, like some crazy thing with a check.
That's the crazy thing, right? Like you did. It was just an accident. It was just a service
accident. Yeah.
The insurance company should have had some way to update the payment method, or have a second payment method, or contact you or something. And something didn't happen there. That happens to people all the time. And it's really annoying. And it's, just because it's not a very efficient industry. So that was our idea. We started out saying, hey, we can use tech and big data and everything to make insurance better for everybody, homeowners insurance. And then we sort of refined it, and we realized that there was half of the country that really, really, really needed this. We said, okay, cool. We're going to do it for those guys because, it's more fun to provide something that people really need and are excited about.
You're helping them. I mean, this is their life. You need insurance. If your roof blows off, no one has $50,000 just sitting around. If you lose your property. But let me ask you this though: what did you know about the insurance industry before you stepped in it?
A little bit. I knew a little bit because I'd done a lot of work when I was at BCG in insurance, and there are a lot of similarities.
So you knew the economics.
I knew the economics. I knew a lot actually about the agents and all the inefficiencies that come from those agents, because I had worked on a case at BCG that involved that.
And the financials, right? The cuts that are going to them versus what you could do from an efficiency cost perspective and put back into the tech and the experience.
You got it. That's exactly right. So I actually had a case, and this is consulting is such a great way to learn about opportunities, and just it's such a great job for learning. But I had one case where I was literally driving around like rural Ohio, visiting these little insurance agencies, and spending the day with them, being like, what do they do all day? And I'd have a notebook. I'd be like, from 8:15 to 8:45, he drank coffee. From 8:45 to 9:15, he talked to a guy who came in. And you learn a lot being that close to the details. And so I knew a lot about that. And we knew there was an opportunity there. And Lucas also, he had spent a lot of his early career at Accenture and had worked on some of these big IT projects, like redoing the claims system for a top 5 insurer. And he just, he had seen how bad the tech was and how hard it was for the really smart people at these insurance companies to do their jobs as well as they could, because they were just so hamstrung by the fact that tech didn't work the way it was supposed to.
Yeah. So let's talk about the early days. Your beta early days. I mean, listen, it's only a couple of years old, but you're beta testing it out there. Was there ever a moment where you're like, shit, like we had a hypothesis on maybe it was a specific portion of the product, the functionality that you thought was just going to crush it with consumers, and you were completely off on it, and you had to, go back to the drawing board?
So one of the nice things about this is we had consumer demand for it right away. And that was actually similar to what happened after we pivoted in TSS Radio. It was like, whoa, we nailed it. People want this stuff. And
they're done with the old guard. They're over it. They're sick of it. They're frustrated. They want something they can control with their hands. They don't want to be on the phone with reps in third world countries all day. They just want to have control.
You got it. And so the customers were showing up. We did run into some problems though, and we had sort of an existential crisis because
what happened?
When we started the company, we obviously weren't in a position. Sorry, that's my computer. I don't know what's going on. When we started the company, we weren't an insurance company. Instead, we were this sort of like virtual insurance company that was renting the license and the capacity, the insurance, like the balance sheet behind
the ability
to actually do the insurance.
We were underwrite it,
from another company, and we'd signed a deal with them that we thought we gave them a bunch of equity in the company. We thought it would align our interests for a long period of time, and we were really happy with that arrangement. About a year in, we just started to realize like this isn't working anymore. They're too rigid in the way they do things. We can't innovate the way we want to. They think that they own us basically because, and of course our board of directors at this point was like, no, like you have to do this over, like you can't do what they want. You have to do this other thing. And so we had to fix that problem on the fly. The way to fix it was to become an insurance company. Oh, that takes a lot of money and it takes a long time.
The regulation, I mean, what is it? What even goes? I mean, I don't know if you watch the show Billions and Axe. Bobby Axe is trying to get his bank right now. I mean, that's the only thing I know about that. But it's got to be like, so you're like, you know what? We'll just create our own. We'll just be our own insurance.
Yeah, basically. So it's not quite as hard as starting a bank in the U.S., but it's almost as hard to start an insurance company. And so you basically have to get a state. Insurance is regulated on a state-by-state basis. You have to get a state, your home state, to give you the license, and you need to have capital that's necessary to get a credit rating because the mortgage companies won't accept you unless you have a credit rating.
You have to back it. You have to be able to back the claims. Mm-hmm.
So we went out not to VCs who we'd always raised our equity money from because they wouldn't give us enough, but we went out to a reinsurer in Bermuda and a life insurance company. And life insurance companies have tons and tons of money. And we borrowed enough money to put in the bank account to get the credit rating. And then we started with the regulatory approval. Now it took a year, right? So we were in limbo in this business. We couldn't grow. Our VC investors all expected us to be growing. We couldn't grow. We didn't know when the regulatory approval would come through. And we were in that limbo for a year and it was brutal. We had to lay off like half the company. It was awful.
Did you think it was going to go south there? Were you confident at that time, Sean, that you were going to pull through, that this was a solution? It was going to be a painful road for X amount of time, but you were going to pull through. I mean, were you confident there or were you scared?
We knew it was the right solution. And I was pretty sure we could get it done, but not sure. So, there was definitely a time, because we actually set everything up. So all, the license would come through and we had to raise a new equity round and we had this debt round. They all had to basically close in the same week. They were all sort of interdependent on each other.
Dominoes.
And, yeah, it was dominoes. And it happened about a month. It took about a month longer than we had really thought. And so for that month, I was like, shit, Like, this could be the end, like, what am I going to do? Right.
Up against the ropes. Yeah.
It was rough, and the bank account went down to zero, and like I had to borrow some extra money from one of our banks, and it was really rough. But it came through, and I was never sure it would be successful. I was never sure it wouldn't be. I was sort of like, depending on how things were going, I'd be like, oh, 75% we get to live, or like 25% we get to live. But we were fortunate. We made it through, and after that, everything was really great. And it solved the one big problem in the business that that could have really tripped us up.
It's a great story too, and I really love the fact that you're really trying to service these I don't want to say these areas of the country that are so susceptible to, and just I'd love to get your personal point of view and how that feels. I think, how does it feel to actually be able to be there for people, for humans that may not have any other options, that their other insurances drop them. They've gotten this unlucky town in the middle of where Nebraska gets hit with 4 tornadoes in a calendar year, and all of a sudden all the insurances are dropping them.
It's really cool. So it's cool on the two things I find the coolest are, we'll have customers every day who are like, oh my gosh, dealing with my insurance used to be such a pain in the butt. It was so awful and expensive. You guys made it so simple for me. Now I just don't need to worry about it. Like, that's cool. And then the other one that happens is like, we actually fix people's homes when they get messed up. And, like, we just got hit by this big hurricane, Hurricane Ida. It was like a huge hurricane. And a lot of our customers were in the path of it because we're very active in the state of Louisiana. And a lot of these customers, we were actually using technology to start repairing their home before they had even returned home, because a lot of people left, right? Because you don't want to be right where the storm's going to hit.
No,
so people
not a good idea.
New Orleans, and they go to Houston or Atlanta, or go visit family somewhere, and they didn't know. They actually didn't know. Like, is my house okay?
They didn't know what the damage was.
Absolutely. And so we were able to use, in that case, use aerial imagery and some image recognition algorithms to tell if their home was fine or not. And when their home was fine, we were able to text them and say, hey, good
That's
news.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And when their home wasn't fine, we were like, oh, hey, by the way, your roof has some damage. If you're okay with it, we'll go out there and put a tarp over it, and we'll start getting you some quotes from roofers.
Wow.
And we'll start
proactive insurance. I mean, that's mind-boggling.
It's how it should be. The people don't want to check, right? If something bad happens to your house, you don't want to check.
I want someone to help you.
You just want your house to be back the way it was before.
Wow. What a huge point of difference right there. I mean, that's like a mindset shift. And tell me, like, does that like kind of just go into your overall approach for problem solving? How you go after solving a problem in life? Like, think about it. Like, there's a big gap here. Something's wrong. How do we fix it? And it's just a human approach. How would I treat somebody else as a human in a business sense? Why is it so hard?
It's not that complicated. Just, people will tell you what they want, right? So if you go talk to people, they'll tell you. And there's business opportunities all over the place. You talk to people for 10 minutes, and you'll be like, okay, cool. There's a problem. I can solve that problem. And I can make money solving that problem.
What's the goal with Kin? Right? Do you want to be the biggest, baddest, best insurance company in the country, in the world? I mean, what's the end game here?
Yeah, so when Lucas and I were doing that sort of discovery, that 1 year journey through the desert of discovery, the number one criteria was, this has to be something that can be big. This has to be something where if we do everything right and we get a couple of lucky breaks, this could be a big, iconic company for the next century. And, this is a space where it's big enough to do it, because home insurance is a big industry.
Incredibly
and
scalable.
It touches so many other things. Because if you think about, what could we do to get more involved in fixing people's homes proactively? Could I get involved in other lines of insurance? Because people who own homes are usually good customers, right? They have assets, they buy other things. Could we get involved in mortgages?
Good profile.
One thing we're looking at right now is we fix a lot of roofs. When we fix your roof or upgrade your roof, could we also install solar panels?
Mm-hmm. Huge business.
Absolutely. It's a huge business, and it depends on you having a good roof. And if we're up there on the roof anyway...
Might as well. 2 birds with 1 stone. But you have to have good roof angles. I learned that quickly this summer when I was looking into solar. You got to have good exposure.
Yep.
Little things. I mean, it's incredible. Like, you're starting at that point, and there's just so many like ways to branch off it. That's incredible. I got to ask you, as somebody who is, a leader within an organization and has been through a lot of different companies, are there a couple of go-to questions that you have when interviewing candidates to really be able to, interviewing's tough. To find out somebody's character or assess somebody's character in 30, 45 minutes on a Zoom call is incredibly difficult. But do you have a couple of those go-to questions that at least give you some indicators or may raise a red flag?
The one of the things that is really hard sometimes is people will put things on their resume that they were just involved with, that they didn't actually do. Or especially if they're working at a big company, they'll say, I did X, I did Y, I did Z. If you don't ask the right questions, you'll realize after they come and work that they were just there. They were just along for the ride. They were part of
They weren't a contributor.
They weren't active, and they don't actually know how to do it. If you asked them to do it again, they wouldn't know how. And that's really hard. So you need to figure out how to ask, like, what was your actual part in this? And ask enough detailed questions that you can really figure out the bullshit. What are their actual capabilities? That's one that I've really had to invest in a lot, because we recruit a lot of people from these big insurance companies, and it's just hard because they're so bureaucratic.
Interesting. So you have a philosophy to ask people for something, even though you think you're pretty sure they're going to say no to it. Why do you think that's important, and how does that help you grow?
Well, if you don't ask, you're not going to get it, right?
Nope. Golden rule right
there. You might as well ask for it, and you also, you don't always know what's possible, and so sometimes by just sort of like starting the conversation, maybe they won't agree to that, but maybe they have something else they'd agree to.
Yeah, and I always say a no is better than a no response. No, just for me means not now. And I'm going to do the follow-up, and that's when I have my little Google calendar send reminder and send it in a few weeks. Big game changer right there.
Yeah, you try to get it to be not a no, but a no but,
mm-hmm.
Right? Like, what would change your mind? You say, no, that's not something I want, but if it did X, then I'd want it. You say, okay, cool, I'll put that on a list, and if enough people tell me they want X, we'll go build X, and I'll hit you up when we have X.
Yeah, that's the way you do it, folks. How did you meet up with Matt Higgins? How did you connect with Matt and his squad over there?
So just like everything else, we met through a connection, and so one of my angel investors knew somebody who works with Matt and thought we would be a good combination, and just introduced us. And we just started talking. At the time, we were talking to a lot of people about sort of financings and going public and SPACs and all of that stuff. And Matt, he did something that was like something I would do. He was like, cool, we just had the Zoom conversation. Can I come see you? And by the way, this is like at the peak of COVID. This is like last spring, basically.
Everybody was suspectedly contagious.
Exactly. Yeah. No, maybe it helped. We had both like just had COVID. So I think we were both sort of like, okay, whatever. I'm going to go.
We got the antibodies. We're cool.
Yeah.
We can't get worse than this.
But he just showed up in our office. He's like, yeah, how about tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, like whatever, like we'll do it tomorrow. And we just got into talking about it. It was clear, like we just think about things in the same way. And
great.
We're always looking for investors. We want investors who bring more than just money. And he brought a lot of creativity on the marketing side. And, Florida's a really big state for us. So with him and the Dolphins and Steve Ross and everything like that, there's just a lot of cool angles in Florida.
There's just something about Matt Higgins. There's just something that I love. And for me, he's a direct mentor to you, but for me, he's a mentor through osmosis from afar. And I just watch the way he operates, the way he does things, the way he interacts with people. He's a gold standard, man. And, if you have a chance, I'll link you up afterwards to my interview with him, which is amazing. Oh, cool. The story about him meeting Gary, that whole thing is pretty cool too. And it just says so much about him and his character and his humble beginnings. Where he came from. I think that really says a lot. Let's talk about SPACs for a moment there. How would you describe what it is to someone who has no clue? They're hearing it in the news, and why are you guys going down this route?
Yeah, so a SPAC, it stands for a special purpose acquisition company. It's basically somebody like Matt, who's a successful person, or sometimes they're associated with an institution. They'll basically go out and they'll raise from investors. They'll have an IPO, but there's no company. It's just like, we're going to find a company later and merge with them. And so there's a bunch of people doing that now, and I think it's really great. so they have this pile of money, and then they go out and they try to find a company that they can combine with. And obviously they're looking for like a good deal and a good company, but I think the best SPACs are also looking for a company where they have an angle where they can really help in some way. And so, then they do diligence on the company that they've selected, you merge, and then the result is that the old private company now is merged into this sort of fake public company and becomes a real public company, with all the money that they got from the IPO. So it's sort of like an alternative way to go public on the stock exchange.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And where are you guys at now in the process?
We're pretty far along. So we met up with Matt, and after talking to him and a bunch of other SPACs, we decided that was the one that was for us. That was pretty quick. So we had that done like by March. And then he did a ton of diligence on us. It took like 4 months. It was the worst diligence that we've ever had, like so thorough and brutal, and just like all these outside consultants. It was like, wow, this
is real.
This is a lot.
It's a lot of disclosure going on here.
Exactly. So that took us basically until July when we announced the transaction. And now we're in this sort of back and forth process with the SEC about making sure that our financial filings are ready for the public market and accurate and everything. That process usually takes like 3 or 4 months. So for us, we're sort of midway. We've been through one round of comments with the SEC. We're thinking probably sometime early December, but it also just sort of depends on how long it takes with the SEC.
I can't wait. I believe in Matt, and I believe what he's doing. I put my money where my mouth is. So I'm behind you guys financially as well. So I'm rooting for you there too. So let's bring it home here. For me, this is my masterclass. I get to talk to amazing folks like yourself, Matt Higgins, Gary V, to name a few. And I love to ask Sean, what is the single greatest piece of advice that you've ever received that you take action on every single day?
Just don't assume that people know what they're doing. It goes back a little bit. Like there's so much power in starting with a blank sheet of paper on a problem. And, the old way of doing it is rarely the best way. It's usually just, so even things in your own life, right? It's like I do things every single day that I just do it that way because I've always done it that way. But if you just started from scratch, assume you know nothing, start completely blank sheet of paper, you'll usually come up with a better way of doing it. And I think we should always evaluate our life that way.
I dig that one. That's a good one. That's something I try to always keep in mind too. Like just not to assume that everyone you're talking to knows exactly what they're doing, and really try to have your trust your gut. Right, your gut usually doesn't really let you down too much. And Sean, what would you say is your superpower? What do you do better than almost anyone on this planet that really makes you who you are? Besides collecting baseball cards.
Yeah, I don't even know what happened in that baseball card collection.
Side note, before we answer that question, what is your prized baseball card? And it doesn't have to be monetarily. You don't have any more cards.
I don't have any. I have no idea where they went. Sometime after I went to college, they all disappeared. My parents have moved twice since then, so I know they don't have them.
Oh, man.
It sucks because I wish I still had them. I had like mine. Yeah, I'm jealous. Maybe I'll start collecting again.
Oh, that's good. So back to that. What's your superpower?
I am really good at absorbing stress and staying calm in any situation. And I think that's really, really important, especially when you're doing something like what I do is an emotional roller coaster. And everyone around you will get stressed out. Your investors will get stressed out. The board will get stressed out. The employees will get stressed out, as you have these ups and downs. And it's never as bad or as good as it seems. That's just the reality. And so you just have to figure out how to keep an even keel. And I think it really helps me to have that sort of level of emotional control.
Do you have any techniques that you could share? How do you keep cool? Part
of it is just practice. I've been through a lot of it and I've gotten better at this over time. The other thing is like, so I'm so passionate about what I do, but also I realize it doesn't matter. Like if everything that I was doing fell apart tomorrow, I'd still be alive. I'd still be able to find enough to eat. I'd still have my, children, everyone else that I care about. And it doesn't actually matter that much. And so I think it's really important for people to realize like, these aren't life and death things. It's going to be fine. If this business fails, you know what? I'll start another one. If I don't have enough money to start the other one, you know what? I'll go get a job. I'll save some money. I'll start another one. It's fine.
That's good stuff, man. No, I love it. And last but not least, you look back on your life and you have those moments when you were, think about the time when you were, trying to figure out the insurance, and you had to dig down deep and say, listen, we're going to get through this, and really truly harness that inner tenacity that we spoke about at the beginning. And on the flip side of it, you're sitting here in the backyard, you're building an incredible business that has the potential, and it will help so many people out there and change their lives. And you want to show gratitude. How do you keep yourself focused? What is your compass? Sean Harper, what is your North Star?
I just like to I just want to be useful to people. This is maybe not the most glamorous thing. I may be able to make financial services more efficient using technology, but that's my part in the world. And, take a lot of pride in that, and it makes people's lives better on a day-to-day basis. I think just, figure out what you're adding to the world and, embrace it and just go, just run with it.
I love it, man. This has been a great conversation. Sean, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I want everyone to check out kin.com, KIN.com. Note it's not available in all states yet, but it hopefully will be eventually. Sean, hang with me for one moment here while I sign up, but I want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Cool. Good stuff. Hang with me for a moment here. And everybody listening at home, I really hope that you do enjoy this show. Please check out Kin. Remember to find us on all the social media channels at thepodcast.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you find value in it, if you're like, damn, I know someone who lives in Louisiana, Florida, or all the other states, and they're frustrated with their insurance, tell them to check out Kin. This is a game changer, everybody. Remember, take care of each other. That's what's resonating from this episode. Look out for one another. And catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.